My name is Jeff Waters. I began broadcasting Marshall County basketball games in 1994. I was 23 years old at the time. I had no idea what I was doing, and fell in love with it, fell in love with the programs and the community, and so over 30 years later, here I am still broadcasting Marshall County basketball. Did football for a long time. I retired from football at the end of 2023, and so it went from more than well over half my life broadcasting Marshall County games. I've been very, very blessed to cover great teams, great players, and build relationships with players and especially the coaches. I've been very fortunate to have wonderful friendships with Howard Beth, and Aaron Beth, and Dan Lange, Kirk Childs, Gus Gillespie, Doug Lyles, Terry Birdsong, now Sawyer Donahue, and of course Sawyer, I did his games when he was playing. So it's all kind of, I tell people that when I began broadcasting the games, most of the coaches were similar in age, same age range as my parents, and now over 30 years later, the coaches are all younger than I am, and in instances, a couple of instances, actually broadcast their games when they were coming up through the Marshall County program. So it's been wonderful for me. It's something that I cherish, I really do. I would be hard pressed to pick out any particular game. There have been so many. Somebody asked me one time, because I did the boys for all those years, still do, and I picked up doing the girls' games full-time a number of years ago, and so somebody asked me, how many games have you broadcast for Marshall County? I guessed it, going back in a rough estimate, it's around 1,200. So it's kind of hard. There's so many great games out of that number, but I've been blessed to cover 4 regional championship teams for the boys. Was blessed to broadcast girls in 2021 when they went to the state championship game and lost a very tough game on what I still think was a controversial ending at the end of the game, where we had a player that was very clearly fouled. They didn't call it, and Lady Marshalls lost by 2 points. There are a few games that I'll never get completely over, and that's one of them, because I felt like we were on the verge of winning a state championship that year. But that was a lot of fun. I would probably tell a couple of humorous stories about travel, because when you broadcast for Marshall County, you do a lot of traveling because teams just aren't lining up to play Marshall County. So a lot of times you have to travel great distances. And when you have the fan support and the quality of play that Marshall County has, you get invited to a lot of events. And so I've done a lot of traveling with the teams. I've been to a lot of different places over the years. And when you travel, sometimes good things happen, sometimes bad things happen in your travels. But I remember in December of 1999, right after Christmas, the boys team had been invited to play in the Kingdom of the Sun Invitational down in Ocala, Florida. And it was a very prestigious event, and we were all looking forward to going. We left early from the high school, about 5 o'clock in the morning, the day after Christmas, 1999, which was a Sunday. And we flew into Orlando, flew down with the team. You were guaranteed at least 2 games. Once you lost twice, you were done. Well, the first game, the Marshalls were honestly overmatched. They were playing a team that was a lot bigger and more talented. The second game, they played a team that probably should have beaten from there in Orlando, had a lead get away in the fourth quarter, and so they ended up losing in a close game. And we didn't leave again to come home until Friday, and which was Y2K. That was December 31st, 1999, and everybody thought that everything was going to shut down and computers were going to turn off and planes were going to fall out of the sky and whatever. But we had lost those 2 games. We were done on Tuesday. Really, just had time to kill. So I had some family in that area, visited with them. Jeremy Story, who was a great player for the Marshalls on a state semifinalist team. He had finished up playing at Murray State. He was working on the radio with me. He made the trip down there with us. And I know he and some other people went to Disney World. And on Thursday, I recommended, I said, let's just go back and drive back to Orlando. That way we can turn our rental car in. We'll get a room out by the airport, and that we had an early flight the next day, December 31st, 1999. And and back up an interesting thing about that tournament. We stayed at the George Steinbrenner Yankee Inn in Ocala. I don't even know what it is now, don't even know if it exists anymore, but it was a fairly nice hotel there in Ocala. And one of the teams that was there in that tournament that Marshall County was playing in featured Kwame Brown, who would go on to be the #1 pick in the NBA draft in that next draft. And he was just a few doors down from us. And I knew who he was, didn't really know a lot about him, but it was a hard guy to miss because he walked out of his hotel room and he's 7 feet tall, and just an athletic kid. Yeah, it was just a few doors down from where we were in the hotel. So we drove Thursday evening. I kind of pride myself on being very organized when it comes to travel and making arrangements and all of that. I guess we all get careless at some time or another. I remember thinking our flight left at 7:50 Friday morning, and we were going to be on the same flight coming home as the team. And so we get into Orlando, get checked in the hotel. We're watching Kentucky play basketball. Of course, we still had paper tickets back then. Our airline tickets, still had paper tickets. It wasn't digital. And we, I remember thinking to myself, I need to go back out to the car and make sure that I know the right time on our flight. And then I convinced myself that I had it up here, that I knew it was 7:50, and we'd get there in plenty of time. We'd get up and turn our rental car in, which we did. We get to the airport, and the flight left at 7:05. So we were there in time for a 7:50 flight, but we were not there in time for a 7:05 flight. So the people with the airline were very nice. They offered us several different options. And we could fly all over the southeast and then eventually make our way back to Nashville late that night. And Jeremy and I decided that we'd just hang out. And I think we spent 12 hours in the Orlando airport and waiting on the next direct flight from Orlando to Nashville. And we found an arcade there in the airport. There was a Pop-A-Shot machine. Jeremy's competitive, I'm competitive. I think we each spent about $20 playing Pop-A-Shot. He'd win around, I'd demand a rematch. I'd win around, he'd demand a rematch. But we finally made it in just right before January 1, 2000 hit. And of course, as everybody knows that was around back then, none of the things that had been predicted happened. But I do remember that was a Friday. The following Tuesday, we played at Callaway County. We had a doubleheader there. That was the first game after the trip to Florida. The late Roger Perry, who was, he had a son on the team that year. He stuck his head in the press box there at Callaway County. I'll never forget. He said, "Hey, Waters, your flight just left." So that was a good one. But and then a few years later, we were going to Gatlinburg, and it was Gus Gillespie's first year as head coach. Sawyer Donahue, who's now the Marshalls head coach, he was on that team. And we ran into and I drove myself, I drove a company vehicle, we ran into a terrible snowstorm about an hour and a half outside of Gatlinburg. Weren't sure that we were actually even going to make it into Gatlinburg. We did. It was pretty treacherous. Everything was shut down. The roads were, in many cases, impassable. But I was able to get to our hotel where the team was staying. Weather cleared up in Gatlinburg. We ended up played pretty well down there. Won a couple of games. Then there was this would have been Christmas of '04. There was a big blizzard forecasted for our area. Everybody was telling us, you got to get on the road, you got to get back here. It's going to be very bad. There's going to be a lot of snow. And so as soon as, and for whatever reason, in that last game we played, I'll never forget, the officials called about 40 fouls. So a game that probably should have lasted an hour and 15 minutes lasted close to 2 hours. I've always wondered what difference that would have made all of us getting home that night. But we all got back on the road around 30 minutes outside of Nashville, started getting very bad. Got to Nashville and it was really bad. And I know that the team and the cheerleaders and everybody pulled off and got a hotel room. They were fortunate enough to find a hotel room because the hotels were being booked very quickly. They got into a hotel there in Nashville and had to wait, I think, a day or two to try to get back in. But I kept, kept going. I was doing about 35 miles an hour, but I was making progress, and I thought, it's going to take a while, but I'm going to get home. And when I got near Eddyville on the interstate, a semi had jackknifed a little bit up ahead, and so that's where we all were for the next 14 hours. And the next day, there was a snowplow plowing the shoulder of the road, and I was out looking around, kind of wondering, how am I going to get home? It's Christmas Eve. My wife was 8 months pregnant with our first child, so I'm really trying to, and of course, having grown up in this area, I knew the roads well. And I'm thinking, well, if I can just get off the interstate, if I could just get somewhere where I could get off the interstate, and I saw the snowplow coming up, plowing the shoulder because it was for miles and miles and miles, just both lanes each side of the interstate shut down. And I thought, I don't know where he's going, but I'm going to follow him. And so he plowed the shoulder, and I eased in behind him. And I just said, I'll just follow him wherever he goes. He's either going to get off at the Eddyville exit onto the Parkway, at that time still called the West Kentucky Parkway. I said, or he'll keep going, and at some point, I'll just follow him and I'll get back out to a highway that is still open. And so I followed him and followed him out to West Kentucky Parkway, came back around, got off at Eddyville, and came on in on the highway. And as soon as I get to my house, after surviving 2 snowstorms, one in Gatlinburg, one coming home from Gatlinburg, I get to my house, and that's when I run off the road into the ditch. And but at that point, I didn't care. I was just happy to be home. And that was Christmas Eve of '04. And 2 days later, we ended up going. We played. The boys played in a tournament at Lexington Catholic, and the roads were still not good from around Dawson Springs to Elizabethtown. And I remember it took well over 6 hours to make the trip to Lexington, and I was just fortunate to be okay and make that trip. And I don't think I was ever so glad to get home after traveling as I was that year when I spent all that time on the interstate and then had the long drive to Lexington, but so many great things have happened to me. I've been able to meet a lot of wonderful people that have become lifelong friends of mine, many of whom are no longer with us, I hate to say, and I've been able to interview legendary coaches and players and school administrators and people that are associated with the game of basketball, particularly in our part of the world. And I tell people all the time, I get paid to do something that I probably do for free, and I still get a kick out of it. I don't enjoy the travel as much as I did when I was in my 20s and 30s, just because you get older and you appreciate your time at home a little more. But I still try to make all the trips with them that I can, and I look forward to continuing on for the foreseeable future, and I think we've got such a wonderful place here at Marshall County as far as the fan support, our facilities, the quality of play, our coaches, and people ask me for a long time, did you ever pursue anything bigger? To me, it doesn't get any bigger than Marshall County, but I never did because I love this place, and it's home, and I've got so many wonderful memories that I could never envision myself being anywhere else doing what I do, and so it's just been a wonderful blessing in my life. I would have never guessed it would have turned out like it has, but it has, and I'm very thankful. And this is, and just basketball in general in our part of the state, probably not as recognized as it should be, but not only Marshall County, but we got a lot of special places around the western part of the state that know and love basketball, and I'm just glad to have been a witness to help paint a few pictures maybe and tell a few stories about some of the great things that have happened in our part of the world.